For Wednesday finance meeting, we have a ongoing dialogue about all the different things that impact the county's finances and using the services that they provide. Today we're going to have a little bit of a departure from our normal stuff and then we'll have multiple items, not that many. The first two focus on our library system, and our friends from the library system are going to report about their recent audit statements, so we can read and get a better idea of their financial status. Secondly, we're going to review the draft partnership MOU between the county and CCLS. That's an outcome of the facilitated dialogue process that had been going on for previous 9 months, 8 months, something like that. And then finally, we have Elizabeth from our Human Resources Department who's going to be talking about the applicant tracking system that they're looking to implement, and I think it's a good example of what we can do to improve service through automation and ultimately better manage costs. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Janelle.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to introduce, I think you know Paul Fisher, our treasurer from our library system board, and a face that is not familiar to you, maybe to Gary, is Kevin Stauffer, our auditor from Smith Elliott Kearns, SEK, from Chambersburg.
I work on Chambersburg, but we also have an office here in Cumberland.
And also Cantel. Many offices everywhere, taking over the world. We've worked with them for the past couple of years and have enjoyed that relationship as much as one can with an auditor. And I've asked Kevin here today to review with you, to give you the same report that our board receives. And we gave you a copy of the complete audit, and what he will be reviewing with you today is the report that is in the landscape version. So which is a summary version of the full report. So that's what he'll be showing on the screen. And Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Janelle. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Stauffer. I'm a manager with Smith Elliott Kearns Company. And again, the purpose of today's presentation, and I have everything on the screen, it's just an exact duplicate of the hard copy in front of you. But as Janelle alluded to earlier, I'm just going to go through the audited financial report, which includes the independent auditor's report, our management letter, and our communications with those charged with governance, our required communications letter. So we've kind of taken those three documents and just put it into a summarized presentation for here this afternoon. So just in summary, before we dive into the details on slide number 3, just an overall view or overall summary here. This year we did have an unmodified audit opinion, which is the best opinion that we can give on the financial statements, the most important piece of the audit. The library system did utilize existing fund balance this year, just meaning the expenditures exceeded the revenues by about $250,000, and we'll certainly get to those details here in a second. But happy to report that we didn't have any findings related to our audit. So again, overall, I think positive notes there with the unmodified audit opinion, no findings to report on as part of our audit. So just diving into some of the details now, starting with the independent auditor's report. And again, this year we were able to issue the unmodified audit opinion, which is the best opinion that can be given on a set of financial statements. What exactly does that mean? Basically that the financial statements are materially correct. That is the purpose of the audit, is to ultimately issue the opinion that the financial statements are materially correct and do not include any material misstatements. It's not an opinion on internal controls, nor is it an opinion on results of a fraud investigation. Sometimes people hear the word audit, especially in the general public, they think it's all encompassing, reviewing every transaction. That's certainly not the case. Again, our main purpose is to ultimately issue the opinion that the financial statements are materially correct. Also included in the financial statements is what's known as management's discussion and analysis, or the MD&A. This is unaudited information prepared by management. And basically, it's a narrative comparative analysis of the financial information. Most of the financial statements are just a single year. It's just a set of numbers. There's a couple of footnotes behind that explain the numbers. But the MD&A is prepared by management and just offers a narrative analysis and gives a very good overview. Janelle goes into a lot of detail there to explain the details of the library system and does provide a good overview. Just a couple of the numbers now, just going over a couple fluctuations, mostly from 2013 to 2014. Overall, you'll see a decrease in the current assets, and then the offset to that is the decrease in the total fund balance. Basically, cash reserves were utilized in the current year. As I alluded to earlier, the expenditures exceeded the revenues, so obviously that utilized more cash in the current year. So a direct offset or a direct decrease in the current assets, as well as a decrease in the total fund balance. The slide right behind that, those provide the explanations, again, most of which I'll try to cover during my going over the numbers, but the explanations are included in the slide behind it. We also incorporated here in the presentation, these are actually from the management letter, but we just included some graphical analysis in the management letter to see trends over time. This first graph is just the cash balance comparison from 2010 to 2014, and overall you can see the total reduction in cash from about $4.4 million down to about $3.5 million at the end of 2014. There was an unusual situation that back in 2010, the state was actually sending their funding in advance of the fiscal year end. So because of that, we segregated that separately. So in order to offer a true comparison of the cash balance, I would focus there on the blue columns or just the regular cash each of those years. Moving to the income statement side of things, starting with the total operating revenue, overall very consistent with the previous year, but a slight increase, about 8%. And you can see the reason for that was the other local grants. There was a $55,000 broadband grant that was received in the current year, as well as some additional grants and donations that came in. But you can see the state subsidy was the exact same amount as it was in the previous year. As far as the general revenue is concerned, as you can see, the Cumberland County tax revenue, very consistent with the previous year, and again, a slight reduction in the other general revenue, but overall, total general revenue very consistent with the previous year. Again, there was one other unusual item in 2013, that was the proceeds from the capital lease. That's the building that the library system currently occupies. Because of the way that the agreement is set up, basically it was grossed up and there was a recording of revenue and expenditure in the year the lease was entered into, but it doesn't have any effect on the bottom line. So you'll see the direct offset to that amount, the proceeds from capital lease 767, when we get to the expenditures on the next page. So the next page moves now to the expenditure side of things. And again, before looking at the total details, under the renovation expenditure column, again, here was the direct offset to that lease. So again, bottom line, no impact, but the year the lease was entered into, that was grossed up. So overall, without that, you can see the expenditures fairly consistent with the previous year, the exception being the other operating expenditures. During 2014, there was the purchase of computers, servers, and routers that were not purchased in 2013. The other obviously large expenditure for the library system are the member library distributions. And overall, you can see those amounts are very consistent with what they were in the previous year. So bottom line, again, if the total expenditures less than they were from the previous year because of that renovation expenditure last year, but the total bottom line change in fund balance last year was a decrease about $212,000, where this year, for 2014, it was about $250,000, where the total expenditures exceeded the revenues. And then on the right-hand side, I failed to mention there, I apologize, but the budget item is included there. So that you can see was budgeted for a deficit of $400,000. It came in about $250,000 deficit. Again, the explanations that we just went through are included on slide number 10. The next couple of slides here are just individual breakdowns of the revenue and the expenditures, again, over a 5-year period. So you can see slight increases in the tax revenue, again, very consistent from 2013, 2014. State library subsidy, exactly the same over the past 4 years after being decreased from back in 2010. And then again, the offsetting item, again, the proceeds from capital lease, again, kind of the outlier there for that was entered into in 2013. The next slide just breaks down total operating revenue for the library system. Not surprising, about 3/4 or about 74% of the total revenue for the library systems comes from the Cumberland County Library tax. And then the other large item, or about 1/4, is the state public library subsidy, or about 24%. And then the breakdown for the other 2%, mostly the grants that we reviewed earlier. The next slide just moves to the expenditure side of things. And again, for the most part, you can see everything is fairly consistent over that time period. Again, the exception being the renovation expense, again, for the building that they are in now. Obviously, expenditures were incurred, and then once the renovation was made and entered into the lease agreement in 2013. And again, the only increase you'll see is the other operating expenses this year because of the routers, servers, and computers that were purchased. Everything else very consistent with the previous year. The next slide is just a breakdown of the expenditures, and you see two different colors here, and the red are the member library distributions. So those are the expenditures that are going directly to those individual member libraries, and that totals about 2/3 of the total expenditures, or about 67%. And then you can see the blue are the actual library system expenditures, obviously the largest of which are the salaries, wages, and benefits. And then again, the other operating expenses increased a little bit in comparison to the previous year because of the items that were purchased during 2014.
Question?
Yes.
The one thing about the purchase of computers and routers, is that for internal use or for use in the libraries? Those computers?
It was for use in the libraries. It was for our wide area network. We received a special grant, $55,000, to replace all of our routers and switches that upgraded the network.
Okay. In the libraries and the number libraries?
Yeah, that equipment has to be changed. We try to change it once every 10 years, but in this case, we were able to do it in about a 7 or 8 year cycle because of this unexpected opportunity to apply for grant funds.
So the gerbil ran out of gas?
Pardon?
The gerbils ran out of gas?
Yes.
So the last graph that we have is just shows you the total revenues and expenditures over a total 5-year period, and then the last column, again, is the surplus or deficit. For comparison purposes, again, you'll see the graph here. We did exclude the lease transaction that was grossed up in 2013. That way, you also, again, had a more true comparison. But again, you can see it's been in a deficit over the past 3 years. 2012, the deficit was about $376,000. In 2013, about $212,000. And for the current year, about $250,000. The next slide is just a fund balance comparison. So this just shows the total fund balance, and you can see in total that's decreased about $500,000 over the past 3 years. Excuse me, from 2012 to 2014. And then the breakdown are the internal designations of that individual fund balance. So those, you can see which ones have been utilized during that time period. And then similarly on the next slide is the final graph that we have is just the total fund balance over that time period, broken down amongst the individual categories. But again, in total, the total fund balance has decreased during that time period. Included in the financial statements, I won't go into too much detail. Excuse me, but note number 4 is all related to capital assets. So again, this year, the main additions were the computers, routers, and servers that we previously mentioned. And then there's some additional details there that we went over with the library board as far as the total additions were concerned. Note number 5 is all related to long-term liabilities for the library system. And again, the way that the agreement is in place with the county for the lease for the building that they are in, those details are included there. So they're used to seeing that as rent expense. We just have those details there for the annual payments that are to be made. Again, it is an interest-free loan, but because of the way the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, required that to be reported, interest is required to be imputed. So those details are all included there in the footnotes. And then the second slide along this just talks about the agreement. Again, has an option to terminate the lease at any point in time. Again, all those details are included in the footnote of the financial statements. And if the lease were to be canceled at any time, the asset that was reported, the liability for that lease, would just be removed from the financial statements. Next, we just moved to the management letter. Again, had we had any findings to report on as part of our audit, we would have had to report on those here in our management letter, and happy to report there were no such findings. Similarly, if we would have came across a recommendation that wouldn't have warranted a finding, we still would have included those here in this letter. But again, happy to report we didn't have any recommendations this year. The other couple items that are included in the letter are just some new, again, GASB's or Government Accounting Standards Board's standards that will be effective for the library system in the near future. And then all the graphs that we went through, again, are not included in the financial statements themselves, but they are included in the management letter that's included in the audit. So the next couple slides, as I'm sure you're aware of already with the county, is GASB 68 related to the pension information to record a liability for the underfunded portion of the pension plan. The library system will have to pick up their piece of that, similar to how they do the other post-employment benefits. So we just have that included now here in the letter. That way the board is aware of that. And again, that will be effective for the 12/31/15 or 2015 fiscal year end for the library system. So the other letter that you were given a copy of is just a required communications letter. Had there been any significant issues in completing the audit or disagreements with management on accounting principle, we have to include those here in this letter. we're happy to report there were no such issues, so that's why we just considered our standard communications letter. So just in summary, again, this year we have the unmodified audit opinion, that's the opinion that we can give. The library system did utilize fund balance this year, about $250,000. I'm happy to report that we didn't have any findings as part of our audit. I know that was a lot of information, hopefully somewhat fairly quickly for you, but I certainly wanted to open it up for any questions or comments on something that I covered or maybe that I didn't cover from the documents that you were given related to our audit.
In terms of, I know with our budget, with the county's general fund, we look at the reserve in terms of the number of days, the amount of basically cash on hand, allows us to establish a threshold below which it becomes risky to run the business. Is there any way to look at the reserve that the library has? I mean, it's certainly going down, okay? It's going down pretty steadily at a rate of somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 a year. Is there any kind of way to look at that the way we look at our reserve to say there's a minimum threshold below which we would not want to go in order to ensure the historical stability of the library system?
You're referring, Larry, to number of days expenditures and fund balance, just to clarify.
Yes.
You could do that same calculation. I can't say we did that calculation as part of our audit, but if you took the total fund balance, compared that to the total expenditures for the library system, and then calculate the number of days, that can easily be recalculated in a similar fashion. But I apologize, we did not include that as part of our audit.
Okay, because there's a number of things that we've been talking about. The fund, there's a number of things that I mentioned. Part of it's for strategic stuff. Part of it can maybe explain that a little bit better. So again, we're looking at a number. The number declining. Question is that an alarming decline? Is that to be expected? Clearly, over the long run, we could have draw the fund balance down, but maybe give us a better idea. I don't know that we have our funds are not considered for strategic stuff or other stuff. So maybe just explain that a little bit.
And Janelle, I don't know if you want to explain the fund balances a little bit more detail. I can certainly get to the slide where the numbers are at, and I know maybe a little better job.
Depends on what you want to use the fund balances for, what the board's intention for the fund balances are. There's an unassigned fund balance, which is about 12–15% of the system office's budget, which is in keeping with government accounting standards, guidelines. I don't have the right. GFOA, thank you. Standards. We have our 90-day contingency fund, which is based on 3 months allocations to member libraries, which is our insurance policy. We're coming up on a situation like that now where if the state budget isn't passed on time, we might have a situation where we need to dip into that 90-day contingency fund to make payments to member libraries on a timely basis because they're relying on an advance of that money, or county library taxes if they're not advanced to us as they normally are. The Strategic Development Fund was set up originally not to provide normal operating funds to us. It was set up to provide funds for strategic initiatives, for technology initiatives, for initiatives that went beyond the normal operating costs of the library system. But we've had to dip into that for normal operating costs. So the Strategic Development Fund is not something that we're using it in a manner for which we hadn't intended to use it as a stopgap to fund deficits that we're having each year because state funding hasn't increased and the county library tax.
State funding has been reduced.
The state funding has been been reduced
Yeah, I
significantly.
think that's what you want to say, not increased, it has been reduced.
That is a better statement, you are right. And county library taxes with the recession, we're in very much of a holding pattern. Now we're starting, for the first time, I got a tax projection for next year where it looks like there's going to be an increase. You know, we're not going to be in this kind of stagnant holding pattern.
Okay, so if we look at slide 17, which is right here, thank you very much. So the 90-day contingency seems to be pretty much immutable. That's not going to change, you want to keep that for
Right.
rainy day. The amounts committed for technology, you know, unassigned with some variation, not a whole heck of a lot. But it does seem like the strategic development fund is being used to cover the operating shortfall. Okay, now, without talking about what's optimal, again, strictly from numbers standpoint, if that amount for the strategic development fund continues to go down low enough, then, and essentially you're borrowing from yourself rather than going to a bank or what have you. So if that got down too low, then you would then threaten your other categories in how that fund balance is distributed. That's fair to say?
Well, the amount that's in the technology fund is about $100,000. It's not,
Pretty small.
the tech relocation fund does not exist anymore. The unassigned fund is really there for cash flow purposes.
Gotcha.
The 90-day contingency fund is there for that. That's really the rainy day fund. And it doesn't really cover the operational expenses of the system office itself. It's really the member library allocations for 3 months. So the strategic development fund, this year, at the close of this year, will be at $1.2 million, a little less than $1.2 million. And the finance committee now is working through various scenarios. The one thing that we're really concerned about is the potential impact of minimum wage, the minimum wage adjustments to what that will do to salaries and wages for member libraries. It will have a profound effect on salaries and wages of member libraries. So, in initial runs of the budget, we're looking at about a $350,000 deficit. That's without adjusting minimum wage. So, and that's it, keeping everything absolutely, level. That's nothing new, nothing bigger, nothing.
Okay, and just, again, no value judgment here. So is the amount in the category committed for strategic development derivative of what's left over between revenues and expenses? Or is there a list of strategic initiatives, like line items with price tags on it, that you have to go in every year and reduce in order to make your budget balance? Does that make any sense?
I understood it. And the way I understand it, once again, I wasn't around when the fund was created and named as such. So I came on board in midstream, and I'm asking your questions. Tell me, what is that? Help me understand it. So the way I was presented to me was the money that has accumulated in that bucket was the excess of county tax revenue over our expenditures in any given year, and then of course it's an accumulation of back to back to back to back years. And the reason that it was accumulating was essentially there was a governor put on expenditures. Okay, there was a governor put on the expenditures that said we're going to increase the rate for the county library tax, and it's going to give you a windfall. It's going to give you a lot of money in a relative sense. But somebody, none of us around this table, but the people that were around this table 10 years ago, okay, whatever it was, said we're going to put a governor on the expenditures. We understand that this is going to give a windfall of revenues Okay, but we're not going to permit the windfall of expenditures, we're going to put government expenditures. That delta, that excess will go in here. Now, I don't know where the name strategic development originated from, but that's the name of what it was called when I became involved with the group. And I asked the question, well, what does that mean? What's that for, you know? And I said, well, it's for a set of initiatives to be determined, you know, and then I heard RFID, which is, you know, radio signaling the book so you can walk out through the scanner and, you know, don't need to check out first and all that. So those wish list items, you know, were proposed as being funded from that balance. Now, what has happened is instead of taking a right-hand turn, it took a left-hand turn. When the state pulled the lever and the floor dropped out of the funding, we said, well, you know what? All those strategic initiatives, yeah, they're real nice. Okay, they're the would like to haves, but right now we just had the floor dropped out of us. We need to have-to-haves. Okay, so now instead of $200,000 for whatever that was over here, $200,000 to keep services at the level they were last year without a pullback. So, does that help?
Yep, it does.
When you were on the board 10 years ago, was that as Paul describes?
I guess I remember it just a little bit differently, but you know, a big part of it was that the state group funding had been reduced, and my predecessors had implemented the increase as a way of replacing those revenues. Some of the state revenues came back, and as I recall, Commissioner Rubino at the time was calling for those dollars to be earmarked into what he was referring to as an endowment fund. And the strategic development fund essentially was the evolution of the so-called endowment fund. And I do recall at the time, Chief Clerk Conley made numerous references to the fact that it would be there for use of operational expenses in the case of, you have a structural deficit, so that was the way it was going to be filled unless the state was going to restore additional funding, which of course did not occur.
And after they dropped the floor out 10 years ago, then within a year or so, right, it came back. That's the piece of the story I left out. Was that the county tax rate was raised in response to the state cutting the money, and then within a couple of years, the state said, oh, here's the money back. And then that's when it was like, well, hold on, guys. Okay, we took action based upon an assumption over here. A year or two later, that changed. The state brought the money back. Once again,
yeah, there was considerable discussion about what to do with the, if I can call it extra money, you know, use that term because it conjures up.
Well, as Paul says, there was a governor.
That's what I found to be the
And there-
interesting piece of the story.
There were limits set on the amount, the rate of increase that could be, the use of the tax money could be used each year. And if we exceeded that rate of increase, if we exceeded 5%, we didn't, and there's a list in the audit of the rates of increase from year to year. If we exceeded that rate of increase, we had to come and ask for permission. We agreed to come and ask for permission from the commissioners to exceed that rate of increase. On page 11, you can see the rate of increase from each year, from year to year. It's either increased or decreased. So the rates of increase were pretty relatively modest through the years, with the exception of 2007, when there was a huge influx of state library funds again, and it shot up 13.61%. But we decreased the use in succeeding years. So the Strategic Development Fund was established for three purposes. It was established for strategic initiatives yet to be identified, for initiatives that, as a rainy day fund, that we could come and ask to use these funds to plug structural deficits should the state funding gap occur again. So the third thing was to make sure that we had that 90-day contingency fund initially established, because we didn't have that 90-day contingency fund initially established.
Okay, so, hey, give me some wiggle room here, because this kind of leads into what we're going to discuss after this. So forget intentions, forget, and there's no good or bad. Essentially what you have is the then sitting board of commissioners making a decision that could, in the context of an odd relationship per county code between the libraries and the county, really the only thing that the county has really to say are two things. Number one, who could be on the board, and what the library tax rate is going to be. You had a then sitting board making a decision basically to provide for the library in years beyond when that board at that time was sitting.
Now, I vaguely remember a little bit different too, all right? And I just, maybe go back, but essentially, the facts are that the library tax was doubled in 2003 by a prior board of commissioners. And the way I had understood it, at least the way it was explained to me, is that it was doubled because there was anticipated to be a 50% reduction in state library funds. And what actually occurred was not a 50% reduction. It was something less than that. So then that created this windfall that I guess the board, maybe when Commissioner Eichelberger got here, decided to put a governor on, how it was going to be spent. So, but anyway, I think that's important to remember because it all has to do with a reduction in state library funds. And that's where we are today. This whole issue has been created because we've seen a reduction in state library funds. Not because there's been a reduction in county library tax support. In fact, there was a significant increase in county library tax support back in 2003. And it has grown naturally over the years to reach the point where we're now up over, $3 million. But the state funding has gone down. So that for every $3 or every $4 of library support, $3 is coming from the county library tax. In terms of government funding. Now, I don't know, one of the things I was interested in, and I guess this doesn't touch on it, but it doesn't show, this audit does not show the local support to individual community libraries, correct?
Well, the member libraries are not part of this audit. This is just for the system.
Right, but I think it's important for us to understand that. So that if there is any local municipal support out there, it's not reflected in this audit. Okay.
But if we were not able to provide to the local libraries the payments we do, okay, through the system, let's say we got the strategic development, let's say in 6 years, right? The strategic development fund is gone. ADOs, nothing to cover. Then you're starting to have to cut into the other stuff, to the other categories. So what is the impact, given the same distribution of where the money comes from? And, obviously the money does come from other places, and that part of it could grow. But let's just assume for argument's sake, in a static state where your percentages of revenue from each source remains the same. So what would be the impact on the local libraries if the strategic development fund was gone and depleted, and we had to start cutting into the 90-day contingencies?
I don't think we would cut into the 90-day. I think if the strategic development fund was depleted, the local libraries would receive the $300,000 less in money in that given year that would be representative of what we have been taking out of the strategic development fund just to fund them. So I think the onus would go on member libraries to say, we got 300,000 less to give you this year, good luck. Right? Or the alternative would be, here's the same amount of money we got, but oh, by the way, you know, the support that, or the non-cash support that we're providing from the system headquarters, don't call because there'll be nobody there to answer the telephone, so you're on your own. You got the money, but now, you know, so.
We're shutting up the computer
Yeah,
system.
yeah, but you gotta get your own computers and your own network and your own support.
Right, so either you have to cut down on money with the libraries, or you have to cut back. Now, this is all very extreme, if it ever got to that point, and, you know, there are all kinds of gray shades of gray in there, but I mean, just again, in a static state where everything pretty much stays the same, that's what happened. Okay. So really what you're looking at is, when that thing gets down below, in that strategic development fund, again, if you're looking for the canary in the coal mine, what's the warning signal? If that gets down below a certain amount, that's when you're then facing this, and again, no judgment attached, whether that's good, bad, or different, then you would be faced with those potential options.
Well, and again, this is the picture a year ago. This is a picture a year and a half ago, you know, the end of 2014. But,
8 months.
December
okay,
31st.
all right, thanks.
Time did fly that fast.
It just seemed like an awfully long year.
Doesn't it?
It does.
Gee, I couldn't believe it's almost Labor Day. You're saying that.
Well, my point is that by the club, well, we've already transferred the money out.
Yeah.
We're down to about $1.15 million now in the strategic development fund. So it's sliding down now.
This is very, I mean, for me, it's like, and it's good. I know we've heard the history of how that reserve was developed, but it's always good to keep coming back and understanding it more clearly.
If I could say one more thing about that reserve, there was nothing ever signed. It was a handshake agreement. We had a one-page thing that everybody nodded their head and said, yeah, that looks good. And I can produce the one-page thing, but nobody ever signed it. Nobody ever said, yep, that's what we agreed to. And that's what I like about this, is that people might sign it.
Are we
10
saying-
years
are we
from
saying
now,
anything, Janelle?
yeah, this is
Are
the
we
same
saying-
way. 10 years from now, people will all be different. I bet I won't be here 10 years from now. I'm hoping.
Yes.
I know Paul won't be here 10 years from now. But people will be able to say, this is what they agreed to.
Why don't we see if there's any questions about
I
the other stuff,
apologize.
and then we can officially segue into the next section. Any questions? Any comments, observations? Okay. Thanks, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Really, this.
As everybody is well aware, we have spent a lot of time and effort, and I think to good effect, in putting together the facilitated dialogue on the relationship between the library and the county, the library system in the county. That consisted of a number of presentations with various panels of experts, and then finally a meeting with the commissioners and the members of the CCLS board to try and find out what kind of consensus there was reached. We were then tasked with coming up with a draft MOU, memorandum of understanding, for a partnership between the county and the CCLS. Now, the context and the reason I was, if it wasn't transparent, it'll be less transparent. If it was transparent, it'll be less of now. There is this funky relationship between the library and the county by law. There's these sort of, I liken it to Puerto Rico. It's kind of regional autonomy. In certain places we can't go. In certain places that's none of our business yet. The library has to come to the county potentially ask for the county for adjustments to the library tax. So I think the purpose of the MOU is to create some kind of a non-binding structure for engagement, ongoing engagement, and better communication to fill that void, which I think has existed probably since the time, to a certain extent, since the time where that strategic development funding was created, or at least to some extent. What we tried to do with the memorandum of understanding, with the draft memorandum of understanding, and just to be clear, we're not seeking any action on this today. What we want to see is how the Board of Commissioners use what we have come up with and see then what, if any, next steps might be needed. It is an attempt to codify the consensus that we reached through the facilitated discussion process as to the role of the library and to the basically the kinds of communications and exchanges that would take place between the library and the county. And the county's recognition of the important role that the library plays for the community in general, but also in terms of advancing the objectives and goals of the county where those things intersect. We also took pains to make sure that we weren't writing anything that goes against what the law says. Hence, this is a memorandum of understanding, not a binding contract, and nothing in this agreement can or is intended to supersede the law of the land. It is a voluntary arrangement that seeks to set up a framework for ongoing engagement between two partners who have a shared objective of improving the lives of the residents of this county. So with that kind of backdrop, I'm going to let Janelle sort of run through the highlights of what the agreement says, then we can have any kind of discussion that people want, and we'll see where we are.
The first section just outlines the background for this document. The two parties that are part of the memorandum of understanding, the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners and the Library System Board. I'm not going to read this aloud to you. And just the facts that we both have an interest in assuring and improving taxpayers and citizens' quality of life, and also our shared interest in being stewards of public funds. And we recognize each other's roles in identifying and prioritizing needs, countywide needs on your part, and on our part, countywide needs in terms of library services and what libraries can do to address countywide needs. And that we both recognize the strategic, financial, and planning relationship that we need to have with one another to further both of our goals. The purpose section affirms that the Library System Board has a role as a countywide asset and as a countywide service provider with the county, working in conjunction with the county, and that the Board of Commissioners has a role as a strategic, financial, and planning partner with the Library System Board. The Memorandum of Understanding outlines areas of collaboration, responsibility, and mutual support. It sets a very general framework for areas, how we would collaborate, how we would work together, how we would discuss things, generally how we would set up ways in which we can evaluate the performance of the library system in providing services for the community, for the county. And as Larry had mentioned before, nothing in this is meant to construe or supersede the law of the land, what the library code says, what Pennsylvania County Code says. This is just what it's intended to be, is to establish a framework for working together and working more effectively together. On the second page, there are two parts to the goals and activities. The first section addresses what the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners would affirm. in the sense that you would affirm the library system board's role in providing countywide services in the 5 areas that are outlined here, the 5 bulleted areas, that you will work with us to develop meaningful measures in the delivery of services for those areas, that you will work with us to help facilitate the establishment of community partnerships in those areas, that you will actively support our requests to municipalities for funding, whether that be cash or in-kind support, that you will review and evaluate our service goals and funding needs and appropriating county funds or adjusting the library tax when needed, but only as in your authority, in your role and your authority would decide, and that you would consider regular rotations of the liaison commissioner to the library system board. And then the library system board would affirm its role in identifying and prioritizing countywide needs and services and its stewardship of county tax revenues. That it would provide countywide library services in the roles that we mentioned above. That we would work with you to develop meaningful measures to help evaluate our success or failure in delivering services in those areas. That we would work with you to develop strategic partnerships in each of those areas. That we would work to seek new or increased municipal funding and seek new or increased private funding and grants for library services. That we would actively seek areas of continuous quality improvement, working to identify, evaluate, and implement cost efficiencies or economies of scale where possible. And that we will regularly review our organizing documents in order to adopt best practices. That would be things like bylaws, our agreements with our member libraries, how we allocate funds, our policies, etc. And then reporting and evaluation, I think that this is really key to the relationship. And maybe this should be called discussion and evaluation. Because I think that this is an ongoing discussion. It's not just a report without discussion about what's contained in the report. We would work together to develop and establish annual performance goals that are based on those roles that were mentioned previously. There would be quarterly reviews of progress towards those goals and the funding required to achieve them successfully. And we would conduct regular reviews of CCLS's financial status, such as looking at the audit, taking a look at the annual budget before it's adopted, our regular financial reports, and long-range financial plans. And then the funding section discusses in more detail the discussions that we need to have on a regular basis with regard to funding needs for library services, with special consideration given when the following conditions exist, and you see the bullet points listed below. So that when any one of these conditions exist that are affecting the delivery of library services, we certainly would want to discuss funding needs in detail at that time. And what the implications are for our budget, and the county's budget as well. And then the duration of the agreement would be at will and would be modified by mutual consent of authorized officials from both organizations at any time. Neither of us, let's see here, and then the final page just says that this MOU would become effective upon signature and would remain in effect until modified or terminated by either party or by mutual consent. And I'd be happy to have questions or comment about content. Larry and I worked on this together. And I think it reflects what we talked about at that last consensus building session.
And a lot of this sounds similar, at least in terms of reporting evaluation, to what we do with our own departments and make performance that's intentional.
I guess a couple of questions. One of the things I see that you essentially, one of our responsibilities would be to request municipalities to increase their funding to the libraries. But I don't see that that's under the list of things that the library system board would be responsible for doing. I mean, it talks about the library system board would actively work to expand or establish strategic community partnerships in each of the above service areas.
I think it says it in number 5, maybe you missed that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it says, under number 5, CCO, SB, and will actively seek new or increased municipal funding for local public libraries.
Well, just relative to that one issue, I think we all need to understand that all of our local governments, just like county governments, are facing financial constraints. They continue to rely heavily upon the property tax, although our local municipal governments do have some alternatives, but they don't have the ability to increase the revenues from those alternative funding, whether it be local earned income tax or some of the other methods that they have. So I think when we say that we will actively seek municipal funding increases, I'd be willing to engage our local communities, especially those communities that host the libraries, and why that's an economic driver, for their individual municipalities and of significance to those individual, and why it would be important for them to consider. But I don't want to make it sound, the way I read this is like we're going to go out there and knock on the door of the local council member or the local township supervisor or commissioner and say, you've got to increase funding to your local libraries. I think it's important that we engage them in this conversation. But I don't want it to be misconstrued that we're necessarily going to be out there, just saying, well, because the state isn't doing its job funding the libraries, you need to now do more. I don't know that I want to be in that position.
But there's nothing stopping them from raising their own fee.
Correct.
As we just saw in Hamden, an issue came up affecting municipalities, so they have a rain tax. So what's to stop any municipality that has a library currently from establishing a fee? Is there anything?
Their own library tax, you mean?
Their own residential library fee. Because nobody wants the word tax, and that's how the rain fee, or whatever, is being addressed in Hamden.
Statutorily, I think.
They're not allowed to do that.
I think it has to be a library tax. Or they can just appropriate a certain amount of money.
And many municipalities do that already. I mean, around the Commonwealth, they do that.
I think there's two elements that make this important. There is nothing to stop them from doing it on their own volition. But there's two historical things that I think we're trying to address here. And just point out that, in fact, we set up the next meeting, municipal budget board meeting, with library funding as one of the topics, that the primary topic to be discussed, which I think is more along the lines, commissioners, of what would be appropriate for the commissioners to do rather than knocking on the door or can please give. I think that the big thing and what I was hoping we would accomplish in the end of the meeting is to get back to this point where somebody somehow construed that once there was a county library tax, that the local municipalities therefore were not obligated to support if they chose not to. And that basically the all or the the vast majority of the funding for the library was going to come through the county tax. I think that's an important historical point to resolve. I don't know now what the resolution is going to be. But secondly, I think there's also, I mean, there's something a little bit wacky about our current system, and that is that you have, and I think this gets to Commissioner Hertzler's point about the communities that host libraries. Not only is it the communities that host the libraries, but some of the communities that host libraries host very elaborate, well-endowed, that provide a multitude of services. And I think, well, I can't go into all the details, I don't understand all the details of the funding mechanism, but they're basically treated equally as libraries, as towns who are not so well endowed and are having a hard time keeping open enough. And then also all the other areas in the county that don't have libraries in them at all. I think the very simplistic notion that I have in my head about this is that the county library tax should fund the basic minimum of services, and that if you want beyond that, and fund it so that all libraries can at least stay open, the number of days and the hours that are going to actually help those libraries meet the needs that we define in here. And that if you want more than that, then you go to your own local folks and see what you can come up with. But I think to get to that point, we have to sort of go back to that historical understanding or perception and see if there's a basis to adjust that.
Yeah, and I do, this is a dialogue. This is a conversation that needs to occur. And again, I think that a lot of folks, throughout the county, once the county library tax was approved, felt that that's going to be the source. And it's not as though our local municipalities don't have other funding needs and pressures with respect to their own operation. I mean, Barb just mentioned, the rain tax or the rain fee in Hampton Township. Well, that's the result of, I won't get started on that, but that's the unfunded and or
But everyone's
underfunded
gonna be
mandates.
facing that, exactly.
Yeah.
They will
And we're
all be
looking,
facing
it's crazy. We have these regulations. Now, one of the things that's missing from here as well is, we say under funding, in other words, when there's a major revenue reductions from non-county sources, when that happens, we're gonna have this special meeting to talk about what? How we need to increase the library tax in Cumberland County? Why is there no mention in here? None. And I think, maybe it was just an oversight. But I think there ought to be something here where both of us are calling upon the state, to fund its commitments. Because of the mandates that we get from the state relative to who we serve. In fact, 16% of the people who use our library system come from outside of the county, and we need to serve them. Why? Because the state requires us to serve those folks with the state library card system, but it's not adequately funded. But I do think that's something that should be included in here, and it should be a constant in terms of, now we passed the resolution, we sent it over to our lawmakers. They're still trying to figure out how to pass a state budget, but the fact is that, we have pages upon pages of state requirements that our libraries, have to adhere to. And they, again, I'll go back to the beginning on this, and that was that the whole reason we're in this dilemma in Cumberland County is because the state has got its funding.
So if we added a point to this that said that each party will work with the other to advocate with the state for appropriate funding, something like that.
Yeah, restoration of state funding and increased funding support.
I think we'd always assume that was a given, but we can put it in diagram.
Well, I'm just saying, if we're saying,
There's no disagreement, there's no disagreement.
yeah, okay.
No, and I think just for record, the Republicans did pass budget that was vetoed by the governor. So just to kind of go on record for that. So where the stalemate is now is we are in a stalemate. However, a budget was passed and was vetoed.
Well, no, I'm not going to debate the budget.
Well, no, I'm just telling you, I mean, was it or was it not?
Well,
It was passed.
It was passed.
It was vetoed.
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
it was
So-
not a balanced budget, but go ahead, and if you
Wow.
want to make that argument, you can.
Right. Other comments, questions, issues, thoughts, suggestions? Or do you want to leave?
No, I think it's a good effort, and I think overall, I think it establishes a written understanding, which I think is positive. The only thing I would say is my middle initial is H, not D.
I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Jen told
Maybe
me
you
that-
thought my middle name was Douglas. It's okay.
I don't know why I put that there. I have no
No,
explanation.
if you could just do Jim Herbster, it's fine.
Elvis's gravestone has the wrong middle initial.
Can we
Well,
ask
and
what
Jen
the
pointed
age?
out that I didn't include Barbara's middle initial, so why I said D for you, I don't know.
Can we ask what the H stands for?
Sure, Henry.
Henry?
Henry?
Oh, I was going for Horatio.
We'll get the right initial. Gary, do you have a preference?
I stopped using mine a long time ago because there aren't that many Gary recorders out there. I
Okay.
differentiate myself from this.
Lawrence, do you have a preference?
It's R. Richard. It's my dad's name.
Okay, let's go for it. Lawrence R. I apologize.
No, Jim Herbster is fine. Jim Herbster is fine. No big deal.
Well, you know what, it isn't, it's always important to get a person's name right, particularly when they're your county commissioner.
Oh, it seemed to be.
I could sign it James D. and then figure out who was that guy?
So, any further comments or questions? I think what we'll do is we'll make changes, set out a modified copy. I'll get individual feedback, and we'll see where that leads us.
Okay, my board has not had a chance to discuss this yet, so I anticipate that happening at its next meeting. It was sent out by email to them, I haven't heard any comment, so it's already in a comment, and I would expect they would approve it at their September meeting.
Okay, well, we can put the 2 comments, the one, instead of us going back, this one, we'll wait to see what the board comes, and then we'll put them all together and put like an annotated revised copy out.
Larry, in response to Jim's statement, so we are interested in putting something in here that basically establishes the Commonwealth is also an interstate vote. So that'll be part of the verbiage. It'd be kind of hard to ignore that since they're
Since they're piece of show.
are we going to get them to sign it too?
We'd like to.
That's a good idea.
Acknowledging they have a commitment to
Wolf.
this.
That's a good idea. Pass it around to our county's delegation to get them to sign it.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say that instead of the state increasing money, let's just say, you know what, we're not going to give anything. And so presumably those requirements would then go away. If they say, there's no money for anybody, go away. So would we then, so if somebody shows up with a York County library card, I mean, would we be able to charge them a user fee to sign out a book from a Cumberland County library?
Well, we would have 2 options, as I would see it. This goes back to the days before we had things like state money. We would have reciprocal agreements with surrounding counties that said, if you honor our card, we'll honor your card. So that, because we've always had this issue of people going to Harrisburg and crossing the river. So there would be that option. Or the other option is to be mercenary about it and charge people. But then our people will have to pay a fee when they go to use other.
Also, aren't we subject to being fined or being reprimanded by the state who say or is that not the case? Because I hear the people from New Cumberland saying that all the time. If we do this, the state's going to spike us.
If they charge, we would not be eligible for state aid if we charged for a library card. If we charge people in York County for a library card.
Okay.
Unless we turn away the
well said. Unless we said, we don't want to.
Somebody could run hypothetical numbers to say that if X number of out-of-county people signed up and paid a certain dollar amount, and if we were able to get away from these onerous requirements and reduce our own costs by a certain amount, and somebody could balance a ledger and would demonstrate what it would take to make it be a push to save by the state.
I mean, the Ys have a reciprocating agreement. I mean, we see that locally, and we see that nationally.
I'm not saying we don't
and
want
so
to do that,
that
I'm just speaking.
Right.
No, you're right. No, Paul, you're right. And here's the thing, the state does have a stake in this, all right? Because if you want to promote, a meaningful library system statewide, then you want to have that ability if somebody wants to come from some other county to come into the, but all I'm saying is that the state and the federal government, for that matter, need to pay for what they mandate. And it's not just that, somebody outside the county can use this. They give us all kinds of other regulations and things that we have to do. But in any event, I'm glad this is going to be, at least put that piece into it. I appreciate that.
Some of you may remember Glenn Miller, who's head of the Pennsylvania Library Association. He's just been named Deputy Secretary for Commonwealth Libraries. He begins September 4th.
He spoke at our third session.
Yes.
Yeah, he was at the side.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Just Paul, thanks. Good seeing you.
This is regarding,
I suggested to Liz that they have a new application that they want to use to track people that were to try to fill positions and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's an applicant tracking system.
okay, so not really finance.
Except we're gonna ask for you to vote for the contract.
So you have the
There's a
system?
cost associated with this. That's why we're showing you.
So this is a demonstration.
Correct. So that you see what we would be investing in.
But we're going to do this at a workshop as opposed to a regular meeting?
No. I wasn't gonna show the demonstration at the workshop because I didn't think that was.
No, you said you're going to ask us to vote on it.
It's a contract. It's part of the contracts. Yes.
I understand, but at the workshops, we usually don't take action, we try to.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I
It'll
used
be
the
on the
wrong term.
list.
It will be on Monday.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. I'm
So this is a
sorry.
demonstration.
Correct. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'll learn my terminology.
It's okay.
Yes. No, just the phone sound. This doesn't need to make sound. Okay. Do you guys want to take a short break?
No, I'm fine.
Just don't want to be.
Calling New Zealand.
Huh?
Could you,
That's,
I could understand
Yeah.
most of what he said.
Sorry.
I just saw a movie called People, Places, and Things, and it's set in New York City. But the star is a guy from New Zealand who's a graphic artist. It was like listening to my Irish relatives after 7 Genesis. I couldn't understand where he's at.
But it started with all kinds of.
Integral. I remember. Integral. Jeez, exactly.
The only thing worse than sitting through the accountant's audit findings is doing it twice.
Yes. That's the cross from here. But I gotta hand it to him.
Bill, are you there?
He is quick.
Okay. I'm just trying to get. There we go. It's real on me. I'm trying to get it up on the screen.
Actually, I just sent you an email. You sent it to me.
Yeah, sorry, we were running a little short on time, but again, a higher overview of this will be perfect for our commissioners.
Yeah, sounds good. And everyone see my screen right now? You should see the higher on the page.
No, it's not coming up on mine.
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect. So, yeah, as Elizabeth mentioned, I think we were just going to go through kind of a high-level walkthrough of our system. Not even walkthrough, I'm going to say overview. As Elizabeth mentioned, I go the hard stop at the top of the hour, so we definitely have 15 or 20 minutes, and I can kind of walk through some good information in that time. So we go ahead and jump over to our demo site. Now, what we do for you is we actually build you a customized careers page, and that's an example of what you're looking at right here. So this will be fully custom to you, so it'll have your name, and if you have a logo, that'll be up here. It'll match your color scheme, it'll have your location information down here on the right. Now, by the way, this page is integrated with social media, so you can share these jobs across social networks like Twitter and Facebook, and we do offer Spanish language support as well. So basically, any job you post within our system would be on this page, and then your potential applicants can go through, they can click on whichever position that they're interested in, and then go ahead and view the job description, and then ultimately apply online as well. Now, one of the main ways we're able to help the hiring process overall is we do have integrations with many of the most popular job boards. So, for example, we integrate with job boards like Indeed.com and Simply Hire. And the goal of this is to increase the visibility of those postings because that in turn will increase the number of qualified applicants you receive. Great. So once your candidate comes in, reads the job description, and determines they're a good fit for the job, what they would do is they would click apply, and then they would begin to walk themselves forward within the application process. Now, our application, our online application, differs in, I would say, two main ways from a lot of other options that you'll see out there. The first one is our application is fully customizable, and what that means is you're in complete control of how short or how lengthy the application is. So we have some clients that have some positions where all they need is contact info and resume, and that's it. They can certainly set it up that way. On the other end of the spectrum, you may have positions where you need a very detailed or thorough application. You can definitely build it out that way as well. We have various custom questionnaires you can build in. We're looking at one of those right here. So you can basically building questionnaires to determine if applicants are a good fit in the position that you're hiring for. These questionnaires are fully customizable, and they are position specific, and most of them can be scored as well. So these applicants are going to come through. They're going to be automatically scored, which is going to let the team know how well they match up to the ideal criteria for that position. Now, the second area where we kind of differentiate on the applicant side of things would be in terms of usability, and I guess more accurately, ease of use. Our application is very simple, very straightforward. Again, you have the ability to construct as simple or as long of an application as you need. A lot of our clients we recommend, basically just asking the main questions that you need in order to make a hiring decision. But as your applicant makes their way through the process, it's very simple and streamlined for them. Also, we don't require a username or password or anything like that. That's actually different from a lot of other options out there as well. A lot of the issues that come up on the applicant side tend to be, when an applicant forgets their password or something like that. And we made the determination early on that we didn't want to have a candidate create an account for something that they're probably only going to use once. Okay. But again, just to summarize the applicant side of things, again, it's fully customizable. You can ask whatever questions you need as part of the application. Once that applicant submits their application, they will get an on-screen confirmation that looks like this, letting them know that the application has gone through. They'll also get email alerts, and if they'd like to, they can opt into text message alerts as well. And the benefit of all of this is we always want to let the applicant know where they are in the process. Obviously, it's helpful for them, but it's helpful for you and your team as well, because you won't be fielding as many calls and emails as you can. That's basically a summary of the applicant side of our system. Any questions there?
No, I think we're good, Bill.
Okay, great. So in that case then, let me go ahead and move over to the employer side of the site. This is actually the part of the site where your employees can log in, and they'll be able to view all the information that was collected as part of the application. So when you first log in, you'll see we're taken to our main dashboard. The dashboard is here to give an overview of all aspects of the with. Next to a lot of them, they have auto refresh tables. This is a great way to keep positions always out there. If you have positions that you hire for that you basically always need applicants, you can turn on auto refresh, and then that'll save a lot of time as well. All right, so I'm going to click once more into one of our open positions. So I'll choose the customer service manager. And at the top of the screen, you'll see that we have a kind of a full metric summary of everything that's happening with this position. So you can track how many people have viewed it, you can see how many applied, how many self-eliminated before they completed the application. We have a lot of position-specific dashboards at this level as well. So for example, you can view your applicants by source for this particular posting, so you can see what job boards are working. You can also see your applicants by stage. And the benefit of the stage view is it's going to help you see where everyone is overall within the process. So you can, for this particular position, you can see, okay, I've reviewed this many, I've done first interviews on this many, second interviews, etc. And by the way, these stages are fully customized. Now down here below, we have our applicant queue. As I mentioned, every applicant that comes in, they're going to be automatically scored. And this is to help identify who the top applicants are and really save the HR team a lot of time, because they're not going to have to go through each applicant one by one. They can identify very quickly who are the top candidates, and just as importantly, who are the not so great applicants, because those are the ones you don't want to spend a lot of time on within the process. Great. And if we click into one of our applicant files, this is where a lot of the day-to-day hiring activities will take place. So this is where you can review all of the specifics related to this particular candidate. You can review their resume, you can review the responses to their qualifying questions. We do have messaging built into the system, so you can email and message the applicant through here. We automate pretty much all aspects of the hiring process. So you can schedule interviews through our system, for example. You can check references. We even have integrated assessment testing and background check. So the goal of this as well is to, basically take some of the time constraints away from the HR team and really automate as many of these processes as possible. And hopefully, as we're going through this, you'll see that our system on the employer side as well is built with a very strong focus on usability. So it's very intuitive. Anything you need to do is going to be very, very clear what steps you need to take in order to kind of move forward with the hiring process. Great, and that really carries through all the way up through and including the hire. You have the ability to hire candidates in the system. You can initiate offers as well if you want to send out a job offer through our system. That as well. All right, so I know I went through everything pretty quickly, but I think I covered most of the high-level points that I wanted to talk about. So any questions or anything that I haven't shown, and Liz, from your viewpoint, anything that I can highlight that I didn't today?
No, I would just add that we're having a little technical difficulties on our end, Bill, just so you know, but I would just add that this will allow us to send generated emails, schedule interviews, everything to make our process more efficient and to be more up to date with the candidates that are applying for our jobs. It's easily manageable. Does anybody have any questions?
Cost.
Do you want to go over the cost though?
Yeah, absolutely. So our cost is pretty straightforward. It is based on the number of open positions that you have at any given time. So you'll see, I think we were looking at the small business tier, which is $400 per month. That would actually give up to 9 currently open job postings. However, we do give our clients the flexibility to move between these tiers throughout the year. So, for example, if if you went through a period of accelerated hiring and you needed to bump up to a different tier, you could do that for a month or two and then drop back down once hiring needs kind of got back to normal. Also, we don't charge any setup charges or implementation fees or anything like that. All the training is included, so again, it's very straightforward. Kind of what you see is what you get when it comes to the pricing. And just to eliminate any sort of hesitation or risk on your side, we actually offer a 30-day free trial, and that's something that we're in the process of getting set up for your county right now. And we give you 30 days to test out the system. You can post jobs. You can really try everything out. So definitely something that I recommend as well, and I think would be a great tool for your evaluation.
And that would be $400 a month on a one-year contract, or what are the terms?
Yep, so our standard contract term is 12 months. As I mentioned, we do allow you to pay monthly. We also 400 instead of 4,800.
Other counties in Pennsylvania that you provide this service for?
No other counties in Pennsylvania. We actually have a lot in Massachusetts for some reason. We've had conversations with a few in Pennsylvania, but we definitely love you to be our first, because I'm not sure if you're aware, we're actually based in Pennsylvania ourselves. Our headquarters is in Dunmore, Pennsylvania, which is right on Pine Street.
But you don't have any clients or any county? Do you have any other municipalities or other government units in Pennsylvania?
Not in Pennsylvania currently. In fact, all of our municipalities that we've brought on have actually been in the last 6 months. Our system is designed that it's very industry agnostic, so you'll find that within our client base, we pretty much have every industry that you can imagine. And for whatever reason, we just happened to stumble across the municipality that started using it. It was a good fit, and from there it was. We brought on many others because there are certain industries that I just tend to see good fit based on the positions that they hire for. And in fact, I've actually, Elizabeth said it to you already, we actually did a case study recently for one of our current client municipalities. I can certainly send it over to you as well.
That'd be great, thank you.
There's no setup cost, but it said it can be customized. Is that something that you all do, or is that something that it's easy for us to do? How does that work?
Yep, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. It is something very easy for you to do. So there are no setup or customization charges of any kind. During the initial setup and training, that's when we do the first couple like job descriptions and stuff for you, but we also teach your team how to do it as well. And again, our system is very intuitive, so it's very easy to pick up, and you'll be able to do those customizations on your own with no issue at all.
So those job descriptions, as they may morph or change over a period of time, that can be adjusted within house, correct?
Correct. Yep, you're going to have your own personal library within the system, so any job that you previously created will be in there, and you can either use it as is, or 6 months from now, if you need to make a tweak to it, you can do that very easily as well.
Okay, one of the things that I missed part of what you said there relative to the system automatically picks out your top applicants so that the HR staff can, don't have to expend the time on it. What's the measure and how does that work?
So that's actually done in several different ways, but most of it is based off of the qualifying questionnaires that you would build into the application. So again, these are going to be fully customized. You can choose the questions, you can choose the preferred answer. So in a simple example where we're looking at the hard skills questionnaire, you'll see that we asked 8 questions here, and they answered each one. The only one they got incorrect, so to speak, was do you have a 4-year college degree? They checked no, so they got taken for points on that one. Now, for every industry and for every job, it's different, but you'll find that generally speaking, you may be fine with a 90% or 80%. They're meeting most of your criteria, maybe not all of it. But we'll start to find it when you have candidates come in that are scoring 30% or 50%, they're just not meeting enough of your basic criteria for to warrant continuing with them in the hiring process. And those would be the ones that we're able to weed out very quickly. So obviously your HR team doesn't have to spend time.
And we can work with the departments to form questionnaires or not questionnaires. I mean, that's an option that we can use.
We can override. I mean, it's a
per
tool.
job.
It's a tool. So if somebody that we, for instance, let's say we knew somebody who was eminently qualified, but for some whatever reason they scored very low,
Yeah.
we can
You can still interview
pursue.
them. Yeah.
But it's a tool to help us in the aggregate.
To save time and be more efficient.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make as well, that it's, this is to give the HR team a head start, figure out quickly who are the top candidates, who aren't, but we or the technology is not making any hiring determinations. So someone comes through and they score 10%, you still have the ability to interview them. We're not going to turn them down automatically or anything like that. But that said, it is there to kind of help identify quickly who are the top and obviously focus on those.
Okay. I see it's almost 3, Bill. Thanks for being flexible today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I know if anyone
Thank you, Zach, everybody good? All right, thank you, Bill.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
So that was $400 on 9 open positions.
Correct, and if we go lower than that, which sometimes we do, then we would only be charged $200 a month.
But if we go over it, we would be charged more.
Yeah, but I looked at our
So
job.
do we have that many applicants that you're not able, or your staff's not able right now to manage those?
Our system is not very efficient. They come through an outside, something that IUTO has set up, and then our people have to save as a PDF file to go to Laserfish. And then every department head, and Larry can attest to this, has to be trained on how to use Laserfish and pull those applications up. And we've had many department heads complain about that to the point where we're just printing off applications now and handing them to them. We don't know, if someone calls in and says, where's my application at, there's no way for us to figure that out. All we can say is we send it to children and youth, and then they have to call children and youth. This system allows us to see where every application is at a given point in time. It will let us to see when they're scheduling interviews, if they've set up interviews, why they might have declined a candidate. It will also allow us to send thank you but no thank you letters out, which we currently don't do, and we should. And it will also give a confirmation to let someone know that their application has been submitted.
But you're also getting the applications in from civil service.
Right, but this doesn't change, right, and this doesn't change that. I mean, civil service is the rule of 3. You get a list of people, you don't necessarily get applications.
But you can ask for those applications.
Yes. Yes.
And should be.
Yeah, we are.
So we have more applicants than the system can sufficiently manage. But I know I've sat here and heard where no one's applied for a job. I mean, we've heard that we've got nobody.
But the nice thing with this is we'll also allow us to do it on social media without automatically, and will let us go on the top 3 internet sites right now for free. Like Indeed.com, you have to pay for. By using the service, we don't have to pay for Indeed.com, Simply Hired, and the third one that they mentioned, it will automatically be listed there. And as an example, John Belko just checked Indeed for CNA applications. He had like a free trial you could use, and got like 10 CNA applications. So it's definitely a site we want to be on, and it's included in the price.
Okay, does anybody else provide this service, and is this something that we would want to, not put out for bid, but seek a request for proposal as opposed to going with one individual company that?
This is the lowest price that I found in my research. We did not put out an RFP, but it was by happenstance that this came across my desk. It meets all our needs, and it's less than $5,000 a year, which you can't beat that for an applicant tracking system.
But it might not be less because we may have more than 9 open positions. Are you basing your 5,000 less a year that we won't have that many open
I
positions?
pulled our open positions for the last year, and we never went, our average was like 7 a month.
Liz, we could, if we had
Seven
to.
open positions, that's it?
Posted, correct. Not, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Cross, postings. So you could have one posting for a CNA. You could have one posting that counts as one, whether you're hiring 10 positions from that. So it's per posting.
I think with the value of something like this, and I think just to answer Commissioner Hurst's question, if we had to or thought it was worth it, we could do more.
Yeah.
And a little less than that is we could get 3 or 4 other outfits to do the same thing and do a price comparison.
Yeah.
Where the value comes in this is when you get a lot of people applying for whatever positions you have up there. There's-
Yeah, so you put the posting out for a CNA. And in fact, we're gonna hire 12, but we're only gonna post one CNA. Okay, so the 3 days free, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we're not deciding that today, but you're gonna present this in a contract to us tomorrow, and then we're gonna hear it and have the opportunity on Monday to do whatever. Now, are you presenting the contract for the 30-day free, or are you presenting it tomorrow as, this is what we're gonna go with?
I was gonna present, and this is what we go with. I didn't find out from the 30-day trial till yesterday, when Mark and him talked. So, I mean, I can do both.
Our Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
I'm here.
Because, just so we all know, Mark has reviewed this, he thinks it's a great option as well. We did the demo with them last week.
Okay, but the solicitor hasn't seen the contract.
Correct. Oh, no, the solicitor has because they got on the agenda. So yes, they did see that contract.
And could you just put, like, find 3 or 4 other companies and just find out what it costs? I'm assuming that they all more or less do the same thing.
And maybe because he hasn't worked municipal or public sector, maybe they've worked, and we get that question, have they worked private sector? in
Yes,
CDEC?
I called two
Well, see,
places.
that's, yeah,
Yes.
that wasn't addressed.
Correct. So he gave me
How
two
long-
names.
How long have they been in business, do we know?
I can't answer that. Let
So
me get you the
who
number.
else? He gave you two businesses.
Yeah, he just gave me names. I didn't,
That's fine.
yeah, I have names out, but I mean, they've been.
Operating in PA.
Correct.
Got it.
They're a smaller business.
He said they're located in Dunmore. My question is kind of like, goes back to the question we had this morning with the company over that we were talking about over at
Yeah.
Public Safety.
The New Zealanders.
Are they gonna be around in another year or two? And what happens if we get, this is our system,
Who knows
but
who's gonna be around? Who's
The
gonna be
nice-
around the end of the week?
Yeah, and the
Smart's
nice
not
thing
gonna
is,
be-
this isn't a software either, it's all online. So although we would lose the capability, it's not like we have to purchase software and get updates.
Oh, we don't have to buy any licenses.
Correct,
okay.
yeah.
Have Mark just do a quickie,
Sure,
on their financials.
okay.
But I mean, 30-day free, that also gives you an opportunity to see whether or not you and your staff even like it,
Yeah.
once you kind of get into using it.
Yeah, I didn't think about it until Mark mentioned it, so I'm glad he did.
I think a trial might not be such a bad idea to consider.
Got another one.
No.
Okay. All right,
All right, thanks.
sorry for the technical.
That was interesting. So what is the process? Is it because of something with the projector or?
Why does it keep saying the lamp is approaching the end of useful life?
Yeah, I think the lamp will need to be replaced. That's why it does that. But we've had them go on for weeks with that. And I noticed there's a spare lamp in there. There is a bad AV switch that's in that cupboard, and I have ordered a new one. It's supposed to be on the way. I was just kind of making sure it's going to take care of the problem because I thought routing it that way would work. We did it on Jen's yesterday.
So we'll be okay for tomorrow's.
This thing has been flickering for a
Yeah, we had
while.
this
Yeah.
Sentinella Joshua
Right.
Light Show thing going on.
Yeah, the flickering and the turning bluish or purplish,
Yeah.
that is definitely that switch.
Okay.
I don't know whether this particular error is because of that. So that's the thing we've got to get resolved.
All right.
That's kind of why I sat down up here. I have an